Our friends over at the Daily Wire get ready to launch a competitor to Disney for children's entertainment, which I think is going to go over very, very, very entertainingly. I don't know if it's going to go over well, but it's going to go over entertainingly, to say the least, and we'll talk a little bit about why. In other news, Biden is set to release 1 million barrels a day from the strategic reserves because we have such a booming economy. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Chuck Todd even comes out and says that Democrats are ready to get shellacked in the midterms, so we'll go over just a bit about what's going on with that. And Biden snaps at a reporter, asking if his comments can be used by Russia for propaganda. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, the thing with those strategic reserves that they're talking about releasing oil from right now, the strategic reserves, is that when we had a booming economy, and honestly when we set them up, it was supposed to be, when we had a booming economy, when fuel was down in relation to what the price of the dollar was, when you had 99 cents per gallon, which was, by the way, at the time, the lowest I have ever paid for gas, both in reality and in relation as well. That might be the lowest in my lifetime, and when you adjust for inflation here, I mean, if we look back to where it was when I started driving, it was $1.19 when I started driving in 2000. And it got down to 91 cents, but also keep in mind how much we've inflated the currency since then, and I bet you if we adjusted back down for inflation, gas was probably down to like 30 to 40 cents a gallon in $2,000 when it got down to 91 cents here in these dollars. So, and that's the time when we're supposed to be able to go back out and fill up the reserves. Now, once again, none of that, well, some of that was Trump policy because we had so much oil that was getting pumped in this country. But a big part of that was the fact that Russia and the OPEC countries got into a great big tizzy and a great big fight and said, and the OPEC countries said, okay, we're turning on that pump as fast as we can get it. Prices be damned, markets be damned, everything else be damned. We are turning that on as fast as we can fucking get it because you pissed us off. And our president at the time, and I hate going back to the other president, and I hated doing it under the past president as well. It was fun for a little while to say Obama did this, Obama did that, but it got old after the first year. But I will point out that the past president did something smart, and he got as much of that oil as he could. In spite of the fact that we, I believe, already almost had our strategic reserves full and filled up the strategic reserves by quite a bit more. Once they found out that they had all that extra oil flooding into the system. So, and now we're getting ready to go back out and take 1 million barrels of it out a day. Doesn't that sound like fun? All right, let's get into it. Let's get started. Let's get the live chat up. Tell a couple friends too today. Get some more people in. The Mad Ones was great last night. I got to check some of that. Yeah, let's see if we can't get to 12. 12 people. I think that would be the most people we've ever had watching Contemporary. Let's see if we can get to 12 today. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can do that. But before we get started, let's get into it. But before we do, Make sure you guys go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turnsofpagesproductions.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Once we get started, once we get launched, we will be carrying great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, and a new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman, plus a new surprise show that's going to be joining us out at launch. Pay attention to the Brian Nichols Show, where and I got to reach out to Brian and see if we can't get a time, but where I will be set to come back out and reveal my name so we can get the Give, Send, Go out there, so we can start raising some money, and we will start getting very aggressive on this once we get started. So definitely go and check that out, turnsofpagesproductions.com. Something cool is coming very soon, where we will see all these shows, and if you do want to and you're in the know, you can check out the Give, Send, Go, givesendgo.com/turnsofpages101, where my government name is out on the front. I know that, you know, They come out here and they say, campaign is created by J. Edgar and funds received by... Whereas somebody else will look at this and say, oh, well, this is created by this person, but this name is down here. Who the hell is... And why am I giving that person money? So that definitely is me. That is my real name. But again, until the Brian Nichols Show, I'm not out to ready to release it out to the world yet. But if you still want to know and you're in the know, go ahead and get in there. givesendgo.com/turnsofpages101. Let's get into the finance for the morning. Starting with the Dow. The Dow is at 35,228.81 points. That is down 65.38 points, or 0.19%. Throughout the day, it dropped in the beginning of the day, then it jumped back up a little bit, and then it just spent the rest of the day up under the previous close line. I tried to claw its way back at the end, but it's looking like the futures are going to be down again, so we will see what happens with that. Although, when oil drops, we usually do see a small boost coming back up in the market, so we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Looking in at the Bitcoin stayed fairly steady throughout the day yesterday. It did rise $116.7 US dollars throughout the day. So we are at $47,194 US dollars and 70 US cents, up 116 US dollars and 70 cents, or about 0.25% yesterday. So Bitcoin, you are the winners as of yesterday. Looking at your scrap metal prices, still a lot of green all across the scrap metal. Copper, steel, and aluminum all up on the averages. All up on the individuals, a lot of up, a lot of green. Going all the way down to small foreign cat, which includes lead, car and truck batteries, electric motors, ballasts, all forms of aluminum, all forms of steel and iron, and all forms of brass and copper. Unfortunately, once we get down to the catalytic converter market, small foreign cat is up, but large foreign cat, regular domestic cat, large GM cat, and small GM cat are down. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up, hard drives are up, motherboards are up. But power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower are down. So it's time to recycle. Go check out what it is that you have in the home to recycle. Go check that out. It's looking like it's getting to be a better and better time to do that. So maybe hold for a little bit longer, but see what it is that you guys have going on. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures fall, crude oil tumbles as Biden mulls huge strategic reserves release. From Ed Carson. Dow futures and S&P 500 futures were little changed early Thursday, while NASDAQ futures rose slightly as crude oil prices fell sharply on reports that President Biden is considering a major release from strategic reserves over several months to combat inflation. Key inflation data is on tap on Thursday. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. Come on, come on. And again, I always say, I actually don't wish to see an 8.5% year-over-year increase. I'd like to see the Biden policies get shoved in the ass, but I know how much that's going to hurt the American people. And I would like to see them get to a point where they realize that this is failing and try to turn back around. But again, this is going to, it's going to take food off the tables of kids who deserve to eat. It's going to take food out of the table of the blue collar. The white collar people are just going to get richer and richer as the inflation goes up. But the rest of us, as we see the housing market balloon, as we see everything else go along with that, are going to be the ones that are hurt from this. But the major indices retreated modestly Wednesday amid a strong stock market rally since March 14th. Crude oil futures and other commodity prices rebounded while Treasury yields fell. Banks were the big losers as Treasury yields fell, the yield curve close to inverting. Chips and software also pulled back. Although up and after several days of gains, Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, and Google parent Alphabet barely budged. Apple is in a buy range, though a market pause would be helpful. Microsoft and Google are above early entries, while Tesla is closing in on buy points. Meanwhile, energy, fertilizer, and other commodity plays rebounded Wednesday after retreating Tuesday. Many are extended, but oil major Shell is just below a buy point, while quasi-sector laggard Phillips 66 is hovering around a potential entry. Strategic oil reserves release. U.S. crude oil prices tumbled nearly 6%. President Biden's team is considering a plan to release about 1 million barrels per day from strategic reserves over several months to combat high gasoline prices and supply issues amid Russia's Ukraine invasion. That's according to multiple reports Wednesday night. An announcement could come Thursday as Biden speaks on ways to reduce energy prices. I'm a little bit curious as to see, and I would not be surprised to find out that we're not allowed to know how much oil is in the strategic reserves, because that would just be an invitation into your enemies. I mean, if somebody wants to Google it and see if you can see how much the strategic reserves holds, that'd be an interesting factoid to go with. But there again, I'm not really going up there and saying, yes, we're allowed to know this because, hey, you know, this could get out to our enemies out there, and this could be the point of a terror attack. That's seems to be the way that the government covers up and hides stuff. Well, this could lead to a terror attack. If it's out there, it's out there. I'd like to see what that is, and I might look into that after the show, but because we already took 28 million barrels out of there, and they were talking about another 50 million more, which tells me that it holds at least 78 million barrels. And now they're looking at another 1 million barrels a day. I want to know how many more barrels are in the reserves. How many more days they can go back out and do this. I'm curious. That's according to multiple reports Wednesday night. An announcement could come Thursday as Biden speaks on ways to reduce energy prices. Biden's approval rating has tumbled with inflation at 40-year highs. Polls suggest Republicans will retake control of Congress in November. OPEC Plus will meet today to discuss crude oil prices and supply. OPEC Plus includes Russia. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, which was 20 minutes ago, the Commerce Department will release the fresh inflation data as part of the February Income and Spending Report. The Personal Consumption's Expenditure Price Index, the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, is expected to show 6.4% gain versus a year earlier. Core PC inflation is hitting 5% on Friday. The Labor Department will release the March jobs report. The Federal Reserve's next policy meeting isn't until May 3rd to 4th, so there will be a few inflation readings before then. Still, the inflation and jobs report will signal whether policymakers will hike rates 50 basis points in early May and future meetings versus quarter-point moves. Tesla and Microsoft are on the IBD leaderboard. Microsoft and Google are on the IBD long-term leaders. Tesla, Google, and Microsoft are on the IBD 50. On the futures, Dow was... they were down. Dow was down less than 0.1%. S&P 500 was just slightly higher. NASDAQ rose 0.3%. The 10-year Treasury yield fell 5 basis points to 2.31%. China's manufacturing and service sectors contracted in March for the first time. They both declined since February of 2020, when the coronavirus first hit Wuhan. Thursday's inflation report will likely move the Dow futures and Treasury yields. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, that's what we see coming back up out of that. Let's grab one from CNBC. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge rose 5.4% in March, the highest since 1983, which is telling me that the year over year is going to be up even higher than 7% or 7.9%. Dow and S&P 500 futures are little changed as Wall Street gets set to end a wild quarter. From Hannah Meow. Futures were a little changed early trading on Thursday as traders wrap up a month and a quarter. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 26 points or less than 0.1%. S&P 500 futures were flat and NASDAQ futures added 0.2%. Some tech stocks were under pressure Thursday amid analyst concerns over the PC market going forward. AMD shares slipped more than 1% in the pre-market after analysts at Barclays downgraded the stock to equal weight from overweight. Meanwhile, HP Incorporated and Dell dipped 3.8% and 2% respectively after being downgraded to equal weight from overweight by Morgan Stanley. Oil prices fell sharply, with West Texas Intermediate futures dropping 5% to 102.18 a barrel. That comes as President Brandon Zadman considers a plan to release 1 million barrels of oil per day from the strategic reserve for about 6 months. Wow. That's almost 100 million barrels a day. So, let's see. 180. So, for 6 months, we're already at 78 million. Plus, they want to do another million a day for about 180 days, which gives us up to at least 250,000 barrels. A quarter of a billion barrels, because that's 250 million. That's a whole bunch. Volatile oil prices have loomed over equities, with U.S. crude prices climbing more than 3% on Wednesday. Germany warned of potential rationing of natural gas due to disputes with Russia, and U.S. crude oil stockpiles fell. We're going to be bouncing around between good news and bad news, unfortunately, said George Mateo, key private bank chief investment officer. That's going to create some volatility. Thursday marks the last trading day of March and of the first quarter. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are on pace to finish up the month about 5% each, while the Dow is nearly 4% higher in March. For the first quarter, the Dow and S&P are both down about 3%, and NASDAQ is off more than 7%. Those moves come as traders grapple with the Federal Reserve's plan to tighten monetary policy this year to fight a spike in U.S. inflation, while the Ukraine-Russia war rages on. Investors are awaiting weekly jobless claims and personal income and spending data to be released on Thursday morning. Stocks are coming off a down session Wednesday, in which the Dow and S&P each snapped 4-day win streaks. The Dow shed 65.38 points, or 0.2%. The S&P fell 0.6%, and the NASDAQ lost 1.2%. So that's what we're seeing coming in off of finance. But, well, first we're going to talk a little bit about the entertainment industry, then we're going to go right back into finance. Talking a little bit about what is actually happening in the country, what's going to happen to your wallets, and what's going to happen coming up in the midterms. But to start off the day, I've got a pair from the Daily Wire. So let's start with that. Daily Wire first, headline here. Audience wants content they believe in, not woke corporations who hate them. Daily Wire CEO unloads on Disney. From Zach Jewell. Daily Wire co-CEO Jeremy Boring slammed Disney on Wednesday for their push to inculcate children's content with racial gender theories and queerness. Boring made his comments about Disney on Wednesday evening during a live stream town hall where he announced the company will be investing $100 million over the next 3 years to bring children's entertainment to the Daily Wire. While the children's content had been in the works for months, Boring explained that recent revelations coming from Disney made it clear that now is the time to announce an alternative. Today we got to see leaked footage from inside Disney of high-up Disney employees saying things like, "We have a not-so-secretly gay agenda," saying things like, "We're adding queerness whenever we can," Boring explained, referring to videos of a Disney all-hands meeting posted to Twitter by Chris Rufo. "So what are we going to do about it?" Daily Wire co-founder asked. "We're going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to build alternatives." "You're supposed to give kids a safe environment to be kids. You're not supposed to be challenging kids with radical new ideas," he commented, taking a jab at Disney's push to confront children with gender and racial theories in kids' programming. Prefacing the big announcement, Boring said that Americans have enormous economic might. They just don't have any alternatives. Daily Wire is building those alternatives, and today I'm proud to tell you that we'll be launching Daily Wire Kids. There's an underserved audience that's longing for these alternatives. Boring said of those on the right, center, and left who don't agree with leftist corporations' obsession with gender theories. There's an underserved audience that's just been waiting to purchase content that they believe in, to give their money, not to those woke corporations and woke media companies and woke kids entertainment companies that hate them, but to companies like ours that honor them, and to companies like ours that represent them. During his speech, Boring also focused on how the Daily Wire, providing alternatives to the left's culture, like Daily Wire Kids, helps build a future that exemplifies conservative Christian values instead of simply complaining about the left's anti-Christian and anti-American restructuring of the future. Fighting to hold on to the past, Boring explained, is a bad vision for conservatism. That's a losing vision for conservatism. Boring emphasized that the Daily Wire doesn't want to live in a decaying culture, but rather aspires to build an ascending culture. So we're going to watch a little bit of this. I'm not sure what, but I want to touch on something before they get to. And that is what the culture has been when you come from some of these big name companies. Now, the MCU was massively popular for a long time. It still is to an extent, and they're still trying to pump stuff out and pull off to that nostalgia. But realistically, what is the MCU? Let's be completely realistic about what the MCU is. MCU is retelling stories that have been told by various comic writers since World War II. Since the first Avenger. And I think it actually went back a little bit before that, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, these are some almost the same characters that have been released over and over again. Every once in a while you get a new character. I think Morbius was new to the 90s, at least. I do remember seeing Morbius in the old Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s. I remember that. But I don't think he came too much before that. But I mean, you're seeing Venom. You're seeing Spider-Man. You're seeing Captain America, Iron Man. People who've been around since the 70s and are just retelling these stories. And what else are they doing? CBS, when they release a show, it's Picard, it's Discovery, retelling Star Wars, or Star Trek rather, over and over again. Which, I mean, I like the Trek, and if it wasn't for all the stupid fucking wokeness, I would actually not mind seeing more Trek in kind of that dark, noirish style. Just minus the woke, of course. But maybe with new characters, not necessarily going back and pulling Picard back up out of retirement, pulling Patrick Stewart back out of retirement. Actually seeing new characters coming into this, and new stories and new storylines. But still, they're going back and redoing the same thing. How many movies are out there that are just another retelling of the same goddamn movie that they made in the 90s? They just keep doing that over and over again. Hell, Disney can't even go out and make a new movie. Well, occasionally they still, like Encanto is a new movie and Luca is a new movie, but I don't know anything about Encanto because I haven't seen it. But I've seen Luca, and it didn't take me but through half of the movie to come out and say, oh shit, the fish are gay. The fishmen are gay. And they're yelling out and telling us that the world will never accept them. It's just they're being sea monsters to be the allegory for gayness. But a lot of these companies out there, they're not making new stuff. They're just recycling and regurgitating the old stuff over and over and over again and getting it more woke. So my big hope for Boring is that if he does this, and that's the reason I went off on that tangent right there, my hope for Boring is that he'll come back out and actually make new characters, which, I mean, I saw the Hyperions. I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the advertisements for it. That seems to be a new set of characters. All their movies look really good. Again, haven't seen any of them because I don't watch any movies ever. But all their movies look really good. Run, Hide, Fight, The Shut-In, the stuff like that. They're not God's Not Dead. The hyper cringe, hyper Christian stuff that just, it turns you off as soon as you go back to see it. It's actually a good movie, and it still has good down-home values. So let's listen to what Jeremy has to say. And we're not going to do the whole 45 minutes.
Thank you. You all still have jobs. We've been doing these town halls now really since the beginning of the company. We used to do them quite frequently on a monthly basis. It's a good way to let the company know everything that's happening and make sure that everybody's plugged in. As we get bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder. You guys get less and less access to the executives. And one of the mistakes that we made is we stopped having them for a long period of time. We've made a commitment that we're going to do these more and more. And in fact, you'll all recall that we did one quite recently. So why are we doing another one so soon? Well, the answer is we realized that we made a real mistake in not streaming this out to the public. So much of what companies do these days, they do behind closed doors. We think that's wrong. For a company like ours, it's wrong, especially because our audience is our customer. Our audience is the most important part. Our audience powers all of this. They pay all of your salaries, much as it pains me to admit. I like to take credit. You know, when you buy houses and have fancy cars, so I can take it away from you out of nothing but spite, God, King spite. But of course, that's not true. It's our audience who makes all of this possible. So why shouldn't we let our audience see what we're thinking? Why shouldn't we give them access to the inner workings of the company? Our paying dailywire.com members in particular have a right to know what's going on inside the heads of the executives of this company, why we're doing the things that we're doing, and you have the right to know why we're doing the things that we're doing as well. As I say, as the company gets bigger, I know sometimes you guys get pulled with the currents. You don't know exactly what direction we're going. We make you do new things every day. It's just good for us to be able to take these opportunities, reset, make sure that we sync up, and that we're all charging the same hill together. And I think that includes our dailywire.com customers and audience as well. So I want to give you an update on what's going on with the company, what we've accomplished so far, what fights we've picked, what fights we've won, and I want to tell you about the fights that are yet to come. First, it's been an unbelievable 2022. In the first quarter of 2022 alone, we have launched more new content than in all of 2021 combined. And since our last major town hall in November, we've launched more content than we had launched in the previous 2 years. I'll give you just a quick retrospective. I know the pace has been grueling, and many of you have worked on any number of these projects, but not all of you have worked on all of these projects. Since our last time together, we've created a best-selling children's book, Johnny the Walrus. We launched a new Ben Shapiro series called The Search. We launched a second new Ben Shapiro series called the Third Thursday Book Club.
Yeah, because that's exactly what the world needed. 2 more Shapiro series.
We launched our first original feature film called Shut In. Our third feature release, The Hyperions. We also launched our first comedy special, Truth Yeller, with Adam Carolla. Our first docu-podcast, China, The Enemy Within. Our second docu-podcast, Fauci Unmasked.
Yeah, I mean, they're going down through all this stuff. I mean, they're changing out in the culture. That's one of the things that I know Tim is talking about this too over on Timcast, but that's one of the things where I kind of want to go with this company with Turns of Pages as well. Is I know for this program is essentially news. You're coming here, you're getting news, but you know I'm looking in, and a few of you know who the surprise new program is coming up, but that's all culture that's going to be coming from the new program. I've got musicians. I've got Stephen Ignoramus that actually is with the group to start with, who is changing the way that music looks, who's changing the way that people look at what musicians are, what they do. Now, again, a lot of people will look at him and say, well, he is too far right for my taste, everything, when they see his podcast. But, I mean, I've listened to the new album. He is a phenomenal musician. Plus, at a moment's notice, I could probably make a phone call and have Brady Leonard and Mr. Behavior on, who are insane musicians in their own rights. Mr. Behavior, game development. There is an avenue, there's an opening for culture, and that's why I always say at the top, I mean, this is not just a news website once we get launched. This is news and culture, where we can change the face of music, video games, and the way that we look at some of the downtrodden sides of culture. Just from the people that we have on board already. Plus, you know, if we get up, we grow. We get these $2,000 up, we get started, we get to the point where we can start looking at movies. actually developing a video game in-house now that we've got the talent to do so, and musicians to go start putting the music behind the video game. The avenue is open. Daily Wire is taking the first step, which they were one of the ones they took the first step to come out and be the ones to say, hey, we're going to be the people. We're going to be the people who are going to change the way culture is. Well, the rest of us can come back and do that too, because it's not just the people in the Daily Wire. So I actually thought this town hall was going to be the next article, so I think we're going to skip this one. But yeah, boring is the same thing. Americans want alternatives to woke entertainment. Daily Wire dives into kids' content with massive $100 million commitment. So they're putting a big amount of money to come in here and show the culture that is this country, not the culture that the big corporations, the woke corporations, want this country to be. And I'm here for it. I would be tempted, I'm still not ready to go back and do that. I would be tempted to throw Boring a couple bucks and say, hey, I believe in what you're doing with the culture. Except for the fact that I want a bite of it myself. And I'd rather throw those couple bucks into the coffers for Turn Some Pages. But that's what we see coming up with that. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Let's get some music back up here. From the New York Post. More entertainment, more culture stuff. Joe Rogan. I will quit Spotify if I have to walk on eggshells. From Hannah Sparks. Joe Rogan is giving Spotify an ultimatum again. The hugely popular and hugely controversial podcast host is threatening to quit the music streaming giant, leaving their $200 million deal on the table. During a recent episode of the podcast, the former MMA commentator got into a conversation with Josh Barnett. Hold on, let me go bookmark that for my podcast listening, because I kind of want to hear him say this now. About the cutthroat podcast industry ring. I will quit if I get to a point where I can't do it anymore, where if I have to do it in some weird way where I walk on eggshells and mind my P's and Q's. Fuck that, Rogan said. Referring to recent headlines spawned by his problematic banter from using the N-word to spreading the pinko pox misinformation, 54-year-old Rogan described his fear of being picked apart by the public for every little thing. There's more people pouring over it, but it's the same thing. I do it the same way, Rogan told the 44-year-old heavyweight. If I become something different, it's because I grew bigger. I will quit, he concluded. Rogan first signed with the streaming music platform in 2020 for $100 million, with still about a year left to complete the contract. The deal had already since doubled in valuation. His troubling pandemic rhetoric culminated recently when a group of 270 doctors and healthcare experts, so-called Hong Kong, called Rogan a menace to public health in an open letter to Spotify. Their sign warning couldn't stop the move the act to act, so musician activist Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and Nils Lofgren did, announcing a boycott of the platform. Spotify has since slapped a content advisory on some of Rogan's episodes containing questionable discussion of the pinko fucking pox. During yet another public review, it also removed 113 episodes of the JRE, namely those featuring interviews with far-right pundits such as Milo and Gavin McInnes. And if Rogan was smart, he would turn around and tell Spotify to go and fuck themselves and take their $200 million and shove it up their Swedish asses at this point. And I'm dead serious. Now, it's been great for Spotify to get out there and to have the exclusive because they can go out. They've got video sharing. They've got video everything else. And it's a really convenient place to go back out there, especially considering I use Spotify almost every day myself. I'll admit that since he started saying he was going to temper himself down, I've had less interest in listening to Rogan. But if he was smart and he really wanted to get out there, be open about everything he had to say, he would tell Spotify to shove it up their Swedish asses and go to an alt-tech platform. Not even go back to YouTube, because YouTube is going to hammer him fucking harder. YouTube is going to hammer him harder. But go to BitChute. Go to Rumble. Go to DLive. Try to convince DLive to go and give you playback on demand. Tell these big tech companies to fuck themselves. So we'll see what happens off of that. Like I say, for me, I'm not big enough to where telling YouTube to go and fuck themselves is going to make any difference to YouTube. But yeah, if I had the kind of audience that Rogan would be, I would not be on YouTube. Well, hey, if I had the audience that Rogan had and say the stuff that I say, I would be mass flagged into non-existence from YouTube. I can tell you that right off the bat. Hell, if I had the audience that Styx has, which is like a tenth of what Rogan has, maybe even 100th, I would be mass flagged into oblivion and not be on YouTube anymore. But I would be out there promoting these alternative platforms. Plain and simple. For now, this is enough of an avenue for those of you who are watching on YouTube to go out and pull some normies in, easily share out the link, and get people who wouldn't even think about alt tech to go and look at alt tech. But that's what Rogan needs to do. I hate to go tell somebody who has a $200 million podcast deal on the table what to do, because he's clearly doing this better than I am. But at this point, if you want to kick down and cut down on these massive platforms that think that they can come out and censor the rest of us, then it's time for you to go to platforms that will not censor us. So that's what we say off of that. All right, let's look at some more monetary and fiscal policy. Looking in at the oil reserves again, from Reuters, Biden admin weighs largest ever draw from emergency oil reserve sources. From Jarrett Renshaw, Steve Holland, and Timothy Gardner. The Biden admin is considering releasing up to 180 million barrels of oil over several months from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for U.S. sources said on Wednesday as the White House tries to lower fuel prices. The move would mark the third time the U.S. has tapped its strategic reserves in the past 6 months, and would be the largest release in the near 50-year history of the SPR. So far, the releases have not managed to lower oil prices, as world demand has nearly reached pre-pandemic levels, while supply has tightened globally. Oil prices have surged since Russia invaded Ukraine in late February, and the U.S. and its allies responded with hefty sanctions on Russia, the second largest exporter of crude worldwide. Brent crude, the world benchmark, soared to about $139 earlier this month, the highest since 2008, and was near $110 a barrel in Asian trading on Thursday. Yes, it only soared those 70 cents since Russia invaded the Ukraine. Let's forget about the $1.30 that it soared before Russia invaded Ukraine. And let's just focus on what happened after Russia invaded the Ukraine. Joe Biden will deliver remarks on Thursday on his admin's actions, the White House said. Russia is one of the world's top producers of oil, contributing about 10% to the global market, but sanctions and buyer reluctance to buy Russian oil could remove about 3 million barrels a day of Russian oil from the market starting in April, the International Energy Agency said. Russia exports 4 to 5 million barrels per day. The news comes just before the Organization on Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, an oil producer known as OPEC Plus, that includes Saudi Arabia and Russia, meets to discuss reducing supply curbs. The US, Britain, and others have previously urged OPEC Plus to quickly boost output. However, OPEC Plus is not expected to veer from its plan to keep boosting output gradually when it meets on Thursday. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserves could hold... there's my answer. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve holds 568.3 million barrels, its lowest since May of 2002. And they want to take another million a day for 6 months, 180 days out, according to the U.S. Energy Department. The U.S. is considered a net petroleum exporter by IEA, but that status could change to a net importer this year, and then return to exporter again, as output has been slow to recover from the pinko fucking pox pandemic, and not from the fact that they've shut down the oil drilling. Now, but there are so many leases out there that are being unused. Well, that's very good, Mrs. Saki. But let's also keep in mind the fact that, once you're out there, you have to have drilling permit, equipment and building permit. And if you can't get the drilling permit and you drill down and you find natural gas, from what I understand, you have to burn off all the gas in the reserve. You can't just cap that and come back later to go back and drill. You've got to burn off what's leaking off of there. So we're wasting more than we're using. But it was not immediately clear whether a 180 million barrel draw would consist of exchanges from the reserve that would have to be replaced by oil companies at a later date, outright sales, or a combination of the two. The White House did not comment on the plan to release oil. Of course they didn't, because why would they? Because then they have to go back and answer what we're going to do if we actually come to a point where we need the reserves. U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said last week, "Go buy electric vehicles from the company that I own major stock in that makes the batteries." That's not actually what she says, but, you know, we saw that thing coming back up here. Jennifer Granholm said last week while on a trip to Europe that the U.S. and its allies in the IEA were discussing a further coordinated release from storage. The IEA has called an emergency meeting for Friday to discuss oil supply, a spokesman for Australian Energy Minister Angus Taylor said. So, there you go. 180 million barrels and no comment. Are you ready? I want to know how much they can actually hold. And if there's a way that we can go back and actually get them filled again once we have somebody with some sort of fiscal sense in the White House. And I'm not even saying go bring Trump back, because I know that what little bit of rhetoric that you saw, and I say a little bit of rhetoric, but the wall-to-wall propaganda that you saw during 2016, 2015 really, to still today, is a drop in the bucket compared to what they're going to do if they have to try to demean and denounce him in a point where he doesn't have to fight for a re-election, where he can actually implement an agenda. They might tear this country apart. Apparently the full capacity is 714 million barrels. All right, from CBS. Biden expected to announce a plan to release 1 million barrels of oil from strategic reserve. Washington. An announcement expected from the president this afternoon could have the U.S. releasing 1 million barrels of oil per day from the strategic reserves to ease the pain at the pump. But what is that going to do exactly? Now, we took 50 million barrels already between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that dropped the price of oil by like 10 cents for 3 weeks. It held it down under $3 a gallon long enough for me to get pretty much to Atlanta and back. And by the time I got back from Atlanta, it was starting to go on its big climb again. It's a decision the president has been mulling over since the U.S. stopped importing Russian oil in the wake of their invasion of Ukraine. Both the national and Pennsylvania averages are down 1 cent overnight. Ooh, 1 cent! Meanwhile, Allegheny County and Pittsburgh gas prices are looking at $4.29 a gallon. Once again, and I do remind you that I pull the fortunate side of living in a swing state. I can go fill up right now for $3.69. I know where I can go and get that. It's not the best gas. Quick Trip gas, I never get as much fuel economy out of Quick Trip gas as I get out of anything else. That much I can say for certain. But I can go for $3.69, but also we're in a swing state. The governor of this state will put himself and tax himself and buy the stuff at a loss, or moderate at a loss rather, to try to keep the oil prices down in order to make sure that, oh, well, look, we're Democrats and we're doing something great, so vote for us and get rid of those evil Republicans that just want you to pay $25 a gallon. It's no surprise that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is the main blame for rising prices, and energy costs continue to spike. Are you fucking kidding? No, that's not the main blame for rising prices. That's an afterthought to try to explain it away. But it's CBS. It's a local affiliate, but it's CBS, so what do you expect? More Daily Wire. This is on the housing side. Unhinged and abnormal. Fed warns of housing bubble as average cost of new homes hits record high. From Zach Jewell. New data from the Census Department released last week revealed that the average cost of a new home hit a record high in February at $511,000. Now the Federal Reserve is warning about a housing bubble. So, most of you know that I attempted last year, and I'm going to be taking some time off from my regular job to attempt to finish at this point. I attempted to get a real estate license, because I want to get in on some of this. Now, there is never any inventory right now, but once this pops, I want to be able to be there and sell the houses that come tumbling down in price, even if it nets me a very, very low amount of commission back off of it. There's going to be volume. There's going to be houses left and right to come back out and sell, and people to come back out and buy them as soon as they see the prices come back down. And this guy wants a piece of that pie. But because I've been doing that, I've actually been looking at both the real estate prices because I want to buy myself, but looking at some of the other things that are on inventory right now that people are trying to sell. There's a house around the corner from me. I mean, it's a fairly new house. It's a good size house too. It's got a attached and detached garage on it, and I think it's on 4 acres, if I remember correctly. But it's $1 million house. I looked at that, I said, you're out of your fucking mind. It is a nice house, don't get me wrong. It's not just your average run-of-the-mill $120,000 house. That's inflated to $220,000 right now. That's in town here. But that's not $1 million house, I can tell you that right off the bat, and that's probably part of the reason it hasn't moved while everything else is flying off the market immediately as soon as it gets listed. I would bet you if he dropped the price to $680,000, he'd probably get it. He'd probably get about $700,000 for that house, but that's not $1 million house. I'm sorry. It's a nice house. It's not $1 million worth of nice house. I actually thought it was a fire department at first because of the fact that it's all red and it's attached and detached garage. And I mean, the detached garage is huge, like the doors are tall. Housing prices have spiked 25% over the past year. Since 2012, the cost of a new house has doubled. Phillips explained cities with the biggest spikes were Phoenix, Miami, Tampa, but overall it was houses in the southeastern states that saw the largest spike in 2021, said Phillips to Morning Wire hosts Georgia Howe and John Bickley, but again, it's really everywhere across the country. Phillips was asked exactly why housing costs are spiking so much. He pinned the reasons on inflation, which is currently at an 8% year-to-year rate, rising costs for lumber and fuel, and the pinko fucking pox pandemic. During the pandemic, new construction projects were halted across the board, and that means the number of houses now for sale is far lower than usual. It's simple supply and demand, he said, and unfortunately on that front, it will likely take years for new home construction once again to meet demand. Another reason for the high demand and consequently high prices of new houses is the shift to remote work during the pandemic. As people were allowed to work from their high-paying jobs from home, for companies in big cities like LA and New York, they were able to leave those cities and live in smaller, cheaper neighborhoods. This set off bidding wars, Phillips explained. Yes, that is actually... Plus the fact that BlackRock is buying them. And that's one thing that I've noted too. You throw BlackRock into the mix, whether they're going and buying stuff up. Anything they can get their hands on, and people are overbidding on stuff like this. Well, they only seem to be doing that in the city itself. Like in Madison, Milwaukee, maybe Janesville, around here, Chicago, Detroit, probably New York, probably Los Angeles. They're buying up the city stuff, but they're not going out to the suburbs. They're not going out away from the city because, of course, they want to move the people with the high-paying jobs into the city to go take the high-paying jobs and then rent the houses to them rather than having them buy the house. And they've got the money because it's your taxpayer money to go back and overbid. The continued rising costs in the housing market have caused the Federal Reserve to warn of a housing bubble, something not seen since just before the market crash of '08. Phillips said this means the Federal Reserve sees people overpaying for houses, causing a market exuberance. The Federal Reserve called the exuberance unhinged from fundamentals and abnormal for the first time since the boom of early 2000s. I'm going to tell you right now, the smartest thing that you could do, if you could find a place to rent, and it's going to be hard to find places to rent because of this, because I think people are doing that. They're expecting this bubble to pop. And the prices of homes to plummet and hit the ground. They're expecting this, so they're selling their houses for over asking cost at many points and going out and renting something, hoping to go back out and buy something for on the super cheap for $100,000 below market value once the bubble pops. And I would laugh my ass off if they got screwed because of it. There is some hope for the housing market to calm down. Some real estate experts say that increasing mortgage rates could cool the market a bit. Yeah, and then people have to move and they can't get a mortgage because of the rates off this, or they're overpaying way too much on the mortgage. And that's what pops the bubble. Remember, mortgage rates were down around 2% during the pandemic, so a lot of people were simply able to afford houses that a few years earlier, when rates were higher, would have been out of their price range. Other experts aren't as optimistic for the near future, however. They believe that until the supply of houses meets the overwhelming demand that we're seeing right now, the prices will continue to rise, Phillips said. So that's what we see off the markets. Interesting way to look at this, but I am anticipating that the bubble pops probably change of Q1 and Q2 of 2023. And I think it was planned that way too, because, that's when the new Congress takes seat, and now it's, Republicans are seeing over another economic crash. Some other cultural stuff here for you, some Biden stuff from News 18. This is, I believe, an NBC affiliate. Hunter Biden cover-up rips Joe Biden of moral grandstanding and permanently stains media and big tech. The Hunter story was suppressed, censored, and kept away from the public eye since it came out a year and a half ago in October of 2020. Who are the culprits? The mainstream American media and big tech, who worked in a concerted manner to dismiss the groundbreaking story by the New York Post that dropped ahead of the November 2020 presidential election. Their motive was clear as day. Bury the story before it butchers Joe Biden's prospects of defeating Trump. They were successful. The story claiming Hunter's corrupt activities, his father's tacit involvement in those activities, and the existence of a tell-all laptop was buried deep in the moment it got out. A witch hunt, as Trump would say, was declared on the media portals and the internet users who discussed the Hunter story, which was labeled as fake. And when that did not work, unverified. And when that was not enough, drum rolls, Russian disinformation. President Biden's son Hunter, a self-admitted crack addict, with that not even being the most controversial aspect of his life, was caught in another controversy when the Post revealed the existence of a laptop he'd left in a repair shop in Delaware. The contents of the laptop, emails, documents, and other details, reportedly crucial in determining whether and to what extent Hunter used the position of his father, the then Vice President under Barack Obama, to advance his dealings with a foreign energy company in Ukraine, and how much of it was Joe Biden aware of. Citing one email, the New York Post reported that as a member of the board of the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma, Hunter used his father-son link with the American Veep to influence the U.S. government in favor of the company. According to the Mail, Hunter introduced an advisor to the board to Joe Biden less than a year before Biden pressured government officials in Ukraine to fire a persecutor who was investigating the company. This is potentially impeachable stuff. The laptop offers a trove of information, and while Biden's detractors are hoping to establish the possible abuse of power and corruption at his end, Biden and his opportunistic yet impermanent friends are hell-bent on scrapping the information from the face of the earth. Biden himself called it a Russian plant before the election, but it seems like some of his friends in the media are walking back on him like the White House keeps walking back on Biden's gaffes in Russia and Ukraine. So this is clearly not bad, but this brings up a lot of very good points to talk about with the Hunter laptop and with what it is that they're doing. Now, they come out and say that they're smelling like roses and, look at all the Trump corrupt dealings. And I pointed out on Twitter the other day, too. One of the big aspects to this is now, as soon as this comes back out, and now the mainstream outlets are starting to verify this laptop is real. Now we're starting to hear stories about, hey, we've got another big revelation of January 6th. Hey, look, there's 7 hours of missing phone calls that we've known about for 2 years, but we're just telling you now. I'm sorry, a year. A year and a little bit more. Hey, there's 7 hours of missing phone calls that we're just telling you about now. In spite of the fact that the FBI went back and investigated this, there's 7 hours that's missing that we find us right now. They're trying damn hard to keep this all covered up, but this is a big deal. And I've said, there can't be anybody in the Democrat Party that thought this guy was the best that they could get out of the field of people that they had. And don't get me wrong, the field of people that they had fucking blew. Mayor Pete, Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson. Those people all sucked, and those people all still would have been better presidents than this guy. And they all sucked out loud. Maybe not. Maybe Kamala. At least she can form a coherent sentence and she can go over to the other side of the world and relieve tensions, if you know what I mean. But I am thoroughly convinced that Joe Biden was put into this position so that he will never ever have to testify to what's in this laptop. Because, again, I think there are a lot more people in the DNC that have their hands in this cookie jar than just Joe Biden. But A, he is a demented vegetable, and he would probably come out and admit to it if he was pressed on it. And B, yes, at the point that he became the presidential nominee, or at least got into the race, because remember, when the laptop, or not when the laptop was released, but when the phone call was released from Erica Marshmallow, who is totally not the whistleblower, Joe Biden hadn't announced his candidacy yet. He was still in a will they, won't they. And I'm almost certain of the fact that he was installed as president so that he would have executive privilege, and again, as the candidate, so if they ever did find anything on the laptop, it's Trump using his DOJ to go after a political enemy. So that's what we see off of that. From NPR. More Biden stuff. 21 states sue the Biden admin to end the federal travel mask mandate. From Jacqueline Diaz. Governors from 21 states are suing to end the federal public transportation mask mandate, claiming that continued enforcement harms the states and interferes with some local laws. The filing comes just days after airline CEOs called on President Brandon to drop the mandate. President Biden's short-sighted, heavy-handed, and unlawful travel policies are frustrating travelers and causing chaos on public transportation, Florida AG Ashley Moody, who's leading the state's efforts, said in a statement. It's long past time to alleviate some of the pressure on travelers and those working in the travel industry by immediately ending Joe Biden's unlawful public transportation mandates. Joining the mostly Republican-led efforts are 3 states with Democratic governors, Kansas, Kentucky, and Louisiana. Last month, leaders in Texas filed their own similar complaint against the Brandon admin. This newest charge from nearly 24 states targets leaders of the CDC, HHS, TSA, and DHS. A spokesman for the TSA told NPR that the agency will not comment on pending litigation. The CDC did not immediately respond to NPR's request for comment. Oh man, I didn't do NPR voice again, I just realized that. Because you still have to donate to these people, because Jacqueline Diaz needs to get some money to get some quiet microphones to tell you what it is, and NPR is always coming out there to tell you how to get your communist ideals around the country. Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Make sure you donate. So that's what we see back off of that. I started reading the acronyms. I'm like, wait a second, this is an NPR article. President Biden announced yesterday. More President Biden stuff. Today I'm announcing the launch of COVID.gov, a one-stop shop where anyone in America can find what they need to navigate the virus. Complete with a large amount of people under the comments that are saying, "Well, cancel the student debt." Dude, he is not going to cancel the student debt. He's too beholden to the banks, first and foremost, and B, they can't come up with that kind of money. But there you go. They're launching the new website at the end of the pandemic. Reading on from this from Box 13, which is under a tornado watch, by the way. I don't know where this is, but I hope those people are safe since they're under a tornado watch. Which, by the way, speaking of weird and wacky weather, it was almost 70 degrees last night when I got out of work, which I did a 10-hour day, so it was 8:30 at night by the time I got out of work. It was almost 70 degrees at the time. I didn't take my sweatshirt with me. I walked out in a t-shirt and drove home last night after work. And I left the windows open because it was still warm out when I went to bed at like 10 o'clock. I woke up this morning, I was freezing my ass off, and I went to close the windows, and the fact that it was 70 degrees 10 hours ago, there's 2 inches of snow on the ground right now. And it's cold as fuck outside. Alright, but reading off of this by Natalie Dreer, Cox Media Group National Desk. Cox Media Group, I think that means this is out of Atlanta. 2 years after the start of the pinko pox pandemic, the federal government is launching a one-stop website that will be a clearinghouse of coronavirus information. The Biden admin has launched COVID.gov, a single site that will allow people to find where to get the vaccine, masks, test kits, and testing site locations, the Associated Press reported. The site will also provide information on where to get treatment if someone tests positive for the pinko pox. It will also have the most up-to-date information from the CDC for a community. So there you go. Look at all the stuff you can get now that everybody's forgotten about the pinko fucking pox. Let's see, Libs of TikTok. A Wake Forest Med fourth-year medical student says she abused a patient because he laughed at her pronoun pin. She has since deleted her account. Not just the tweet, but her whole account. Luckily, we got a screenshot of this, and I don't have any reason to believe that this is doctored. This might be doctored, of course. But KDell, at KDell 2023, said, I had a patient I was doing a blood draw on see my pronoun pin and loudly laugh to the staff. She, her? Well, of course it is. What other pronouns are there? It? I missed his vein, so he had to get stuck twice. The Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm unless the person laughs at your pronoun pin. Della was quote tweeting Shirley Obubi. I don't even know how to pronounce that. MD is a pluripotent. CW, transphobia. My badge has had she, her pronouns for a year. I'm cis and I work to help my patients and colleagues who fall under the trans umbrella feel a little bit more comfy. In the last few weeks, several cis patients have berated me for it. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't give a fuck about your pronoun pin. I don't care. If you want to show the world that you have mental delusion, go ahead and do that. But now that I see shit like this, you know what? I don't want to be treated by these people. And I'm going to come right out and say this. I don't want to be treated by these people. People who would come out and proudly brag about. Now, if the hospital requires it, it's one thing. But that they would proudly brag about that? No, I don't want to be treated by you. Fuck that. Oh, I heard that you're a YouTuber and you do news and you do it from a conservative angle. Oh, sorry, I guess I slipped and cut your fucking aorta. It was an accident, I promise. From the Blaze medical student, says she missed a vein on patient after he laughed at her pronoun pin. Then he had to get stuck twice. A student from Wake Forest School of Medicine on Tuesday tweeted that after a patient laughed at her pronoun pin in front of other medical staff, she missed a vein during a blood draw and added that he had to get stuck twice. The student soon deleted her Twitter account, and the medical school said the student's tweet doesn't reflect its values and added that officials are taking measures to address this with the student. Libs of TikTok posted a screenshot of a Twitter reply from KTZed 2023, who is a medical school student in question. We read the tweet already. The student's tweet was in response to a tweet from Shirlene Obwubi, who wrote that her ID badge has had she/her pronouns for a year. Yeah, we read that too. The medical school on Tuesday said the student's tweet doesn't reflect the school's values and that officials are taking measures to address this with the student. Wake Forest did reply, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. This student's tweet does not reflect how Wake Forest University School of Medicine treats patients and provides patient care. We are taking measures to address this with the student." Which tells me that the student is no longer a student. Fox News says it reached out to the medical student in question, noting that the post-millennial identified her as a fourth-year student. Quichelle Del Rosario, Fox News, said it's unclear if the student will face any disciplinary action or criminal charges. I doubt they will go with criminal charges. Even though there is clear malice, I doubt that they will go with that, because that means that they will have that attached to their name. Instead, they will probably kick her out of the school and try to hush her up as quickly as possible. So that's what we say. Here's one from the New York Post, and we're actually not going to read the article. I just wanted to show you guys the picture. Here is robot dog carrying a loudspeaker that barks COVID safety instructions in China. And we're not going to really read the article because I'm sure that if there's video of that, it'll all be in Cantonese, so none of us are going to understand it, but I'm pretty sure a nice 45 will take care of that thing. What do you think? I think that a good 45 would take care of that problem entirely. Unfortunately, the only 45s in China are owned by the government. And I'm sorry, I was about to say that's a 10mm, but that's not a 10mm because that'd be a 40. Here's some fun stuff for you from the Daily Wire. Second least watched Oscars in history. From Katie Jerkovich. The ratings are in, and the 94th Academy Awards was the second least watched Oscars in the history of the show since Nielsen started tracking viewers watching the annual event in the mid-70s. And I'm willing to bet that the only reason that it got up to second, because it was going to be the least watched before, but the only reason it made it back up to second is because people started frantically tuning in to try to figure out what was happening with Will Smith. The 2022 Oscars on ABC scored 16.6 million viewers with a 3.76 rating on the coveted demographic of adults ages 18 to 49 in the final same-day ratings, reported Hollywood Reporter in a piece published on Monday. The numbers put the show at 58% in viewership compared to 2021 show that had a historic low rating with 10.5 million watching the show in live plus same-day Nielsen data, reported Variety. It also jumped up 73% in the Vital Age demo, which had a 2.12 rating in 2021. While those numbers compared to last year look impressive, it was still the second worst viewership in the history of the Oscars until the 93rd Academy Awards. The show had never had fewer than 20 million people watching. The slight increase in viewership in the first Oscars to have a host since 2018 followed similar ratings patterns. The Emmys and the Screen Actors Guild Awards enjoyed comparable to the 2021 season, reported The Hollywood Reporter. No, I'm pretty positive that the only reason it got back up to second was the fact that, again, everybody ran in at the very end to say, "What the fuck happened with Will Smith? I want to watch this. What happened?" From Fox, MSDNC's Chuck Todd says Democrats in shellacking territory ahead of midterms. Not a good time for them. Thank you, F. Chuck Todd. From Joseph A. Wolf's Own, MSDNC anchor F. Chuck Todd offered a grim forecast on Wednesday for Democrats in his midterm preview ahead of November's election. Todd displayed what he called his midterm meter for President's Party that ranges from exceptional to shellacking, showing how many midterm elections have fallen in the latter category, as the common trend for the party that controls the White House ends up losing heavily in Congress. He explained that the tool to understand and visualize which way the political winds are blowing based on NBC News polling data specifically examining how Americans view the direction of the country, the president's job approval, and the generic congressional ballot preference. Todd first cited from the NBC News poll that 71% of voters say the country is headed in the wrong direction, which he called striking, since it's the third consecutive poll showing at least 70% with the same response, suggesting it's not a good time to be a Democrat since such a statistic falls in the shellacking category. The poll in question was conducted between March 18th and 22nd among 1,000 adults, which had a margin error of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points. Its error margin for the 790 registered voters was 3.5 percentage points, which I'm much, much more eager and interested in the 790 registered voters than the 1,000 adults, because, at which point they come off and they find Yuri on the street and say, "Yuri, you're from Russia. Do you like Democrats?" But the registered voters, people who are actually registered and most likely going to go back out and vote because they're already registered, that I'm more interested in. Look, 65% wrong track is a bad number, Todd said on Wednesday. Pivoting to Biden's job approval, the NBC News found that at only 40% approval, Todd pointed out how President Bill Clinton and George W. had midterms go their way in 98 and 2002 with a minimum of 50% approval, and that anywhere below 45% falls in the bad category. Biden is at 40, W was at 39 in 2006. We know how that turned out, Todd said. You see that in shellacking territory. If I remember correctly, though, in 98 and 2002, both presidents, W and Clinton, had more to lose. I mean, we're on razor-thin margins right now. What is it? Like, the House can lose 7 seats? And only 7 seats and still maintain power? Some ridiculously low number like that. The House Democrats can lose 7 seats, and Senate Democrats can't lose anything at all. The Meet the Depressed Daily host pointed to generic ballot preferences from the NBC News poll showing Republicans having a 2-point edge over Democrats in a 46-44 matchup, but warned MSDNC viewers who see that as competitive. No, Todd said, and national polling is extremely rare because the way gerrymandering has worked. The Democrats are packed into districts. You know they have more than 85% districts, and the Republicans do. The bottom line is generic ballot. If the Democrats are losing, it means that they are going to get walloped. Last time in 2010, Republicans had a 2-point advantage that translated into 63 seats. And by the way, these polls are massively skewed as well. If Republicans have an advantage at all, the Democrats are going to get fucking walloped. I hate to tell you this. Because Republicans typically start to win at the point that Democrats start to get below a 5-point advantage. Because these polls are skewed so far to go to try to demoralize the political enemies, the Republicans. So if Republicans are even up by 1 point, prepare to see a shift in the House and Senate. But that's what we see off of that. From CBS. Oh, is this video only? So, some good news, and we're going to move into doing some Russia stuff. We're not going to get through all of it. Plus, we got to do thing I like and thing that I hate. But some good news coming out of the Russia front. There were talks that an American astronaut was going to get stranded on the International Space Station.
Russia did not prevent
that the astronaut was going to get stranded on the International Space Station because they wouldn't want the Russians to come bring him down in their space shuttle. But they made a truce, they brought him down, and everybody was happy out of that. Let's listen.
An American astronaut from hitching a ride back to Earth with 2 Russian cosmonauts. They all landed safely today in Kazakhstan. Astronaut Mark Vandehey and one of his Russian colleagues spent a record 355 days at the International Space Station, a place the astronauts call a symbol of friendship and cooperation.
And that's it.
A 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
So that's what we see off of that. And yeah, I mean, it's good to see that there's still some cooperation going on in there, especially for something that's as important as getting somebody back up off the space station. Let's grab one from CNBC. Russian troops sabotaging their own equipment and refusing orders in Ukraine, UK spy chief says. If true, that's what we always say on this is if true. President Putin has misjudged the situation in Ukraine, but his advisors are scared of telling him the truth about what's happening on the ground, the head of Britain's intelligence agency said on Thursday. It increasingly looks like Putin has massively misjudged the situation. It's clear he misjudged the resistance of the Ukrainian people. Jeremy Fleming, director of UK intelligence agency GCHQ, said in a speech in Australia. Referring to the conflict in Ukraine as Putin's personal war, Fleming said the Russian leader has also underestimated the economic consequences of the sanctions regime as well as Russia's military capabilities. We've seen Russian soldiers, short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders, sabotaging their own equipment, and even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft, he said. And even though we believe Putin's advisors are afraid to tell the truth of what's going on, the extent of these misjudgments must be crystal clear to the regime. A spokesperson for the Russian government was not available for comment when contacted by CNBC. Fleming did not give any details on how GCHQ or British intelligence officials knew how Putin's inner circle felt about relaying the details of the invasion to the Russian leader. Fleming's comments came after the newly declassified U.S. intelligence revealed on Wednesday that Russian President feels that he has been misled by Russian military leaders who kept crucial details about the invasion from him over fear of angering him. The White House Communications Director, Kate Bedingfield, told reporters that the failure to tell Putin what was really happening had resulted in persistent tension between Putin and his military leadership. So, is this true? I don't know. This would be massively demoralizing to a Russian military force if it was. Or even if they tried to come back out and tell the military force that this was true to try to, again, demoralize. I don't know. I know that we don't see a lot of news out of this, and I mean, the news stack that I have for this is across 2 days. And that's after taking a bunch of it back out, because there is just no interest in this anymore. This didn't go Biden's way, now they're trying to cover it back up. And now they're trying to bring the pinko fucking pox back. From Reuters. Scholz to Zelensky, Germany ready to act as security guarantor for Ukraine. Why? Why poke the bear? No pun intended. From Reuters. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has told the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that Germany is ready to act as a security guarantor for Ukraine, said a German government spokesperson in Berlin. Scholz signaled a general willingness about the role in a phone call with Zelensky, a spokesperson, Stefan Heberstreit, told a regular news conference on Wednesday. Heberstreit said he did not want to speculate about whether the security guarantor role would also include a military component. Excuse me, I had a hiccup there. You realize that this kind of activity, this type of activity is the exact reason that you have this whole shit going on right now. If you believe everything that the mainstream media tells you, of course. We want to invade Ukraine because we do not want to have NATO on doorstep. Hey, I'm Germany. I want to go be on your doorstep and make sure Ukraine is safe. Hey, look at me. Does it seem like a bad idea to anybody else? From the Associated Press. Relief for Kiev. Russia vows to scale back near the capital. From Nebikina and Uras Karmanau. Russia announced on Tuesday it will significantly scale back military operations near Ukraine's capital and a northern city, as the outlines of a possible deal to end the grinding war came into view at the latest round of talks. Ukraine's delegation at the conference held in Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople. Now it's in Istanbul, not Constantinople. Yes, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Laid out a framework under which country would declare itself neutral, and its security would be guaranteed by the array of other nations. Moscow's public reaction was positive, and the negotiations are expected to resume Wednesday, 5 weeks into what has devolved into a bloody war of attrition, with thousands dead and almost 4 million Ukrainians fleeing the country. Amid the talks, Russian Deputy Minister Alexander Fomin said that Moscow has decided to fundamentally cut back military activity in the direction of Kiev and Chernihiv to increase mutual trust and create conditions for further negotiations. He did not immediately spell out what it would mean in practical terms. The announcement was met with skepticism from US and others. And that's possibly because, in spite of the fact that they have pledged to pull back, they're still bombing. From Reuters. Russia bombs Ukraine cities despite pledge to pull back from Kiev. From Natalia Zenets and Gleb Garanich. Russian forces bombarded a besieged city in northern Ukraine on Wednesday, a day after promising to scale down operations there, and Kiev and its western allies dismissed a pullback near the capital as a ploy to regroup, by invaders taking heavy losses. Nearly 5 weeks into an invasion, which it has failed to capture any major cities, Russia has said it would curtail operations near Kiev and the northern city of Chernihiv to increase mutual trust for peace talks. But Chernihiv's mayor, Vladislav Ostroshenko, said that Russia's bombardment has only intensified over the past 24 hours, with more than 100,000 people trapped in the city with just enough food and medical supplies to last about another week. Yeah, here's the story. And this is what I have said from the first time we started to see troops lining up outside of the borders all the way back in November. Nobody knows what's going on here because whether you get your news from 4chan Whether you get your news from RT, whether you get your news from CNN, or whether you get your news from the Daily Wire, you are being fed a deeply designed propaganda piece meant to make you feel a certain way. Nobody has any idea what's going on over there. They just know that they want the West in it. Other than that, nobody else outside of the areas that are actually getting bombed has any goddamn idea what's going on there. From the Daily Mail. I do want to get through a few more of these here. Putin and his high command are already hunkering in secret bunkers after Kremlin spokesman said Russia would use nukes in the face of existential threat. From Will Stewart. New evidence has emerged of Vladimir and his highest-ranking commanders are running the war in Ukraine from top-secret nuclear bunkers. Movements of planes used by top Kremlin officials show Putin may be in hideaway near a circuit in western Siberia, it has been claimed. His defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, who has been mysteriously absent for several weeks, sparking rumors about his death, is believed to be in a bunker near Ufa in the Urals, 725 miles east of Moscow, according to the investigative journalist Christo Grosev. This theory is backed up by his daughter Ksenia Shoigu, 31, visiting Ufa for an estimated 3 days on March 22nd, with mounting speculation the defense minister isn't suffering from heart problems. Is suffering from heart problems. She also abruptly barred public access to her Instagram, where she had posed with her baby in the blue and yellow colors of Ukraine. The suspected use of the high-security nuclear bunkers is concerning as it leads to suggestions Putin may be prepared to deploy nuclear weapons, a move that would lead to inevitable reprisals. So, I mean, that's actually worth thinking about, the fact that they're in nuclear-protected bunkers, and people are afraid to go back and tell them what's actually happening on the ground, and again, I'm not going to come out here and say that this is actually a problem and something that we need to stop and end the world over. No pun intended. But it's something to pay attention to, at least, if it's true. Let's see. What else do we want to get to? Let's do these two, let's do this one, and then we will do Thing I Like and Thing That I Hate. So, reading from the New York Post. President Biden appears to reveal U.S. troops training in Ukrainian forces in Poland. This might actually be funnier. FedEx fails. Delivery driver's truck rolls away. Before we blackpill ourselves entirely, we need this. From a Ring doorbell, of course. Come back! Not bad for a 200-meter dash. All right, back to the blackpilling. President Biden appeared to let slip Monday that U.S. troops are training Ukrainian forces in Poland, contradicting his national security advisor and creating more confusion about the 82nd Airborne's mission in Eastern Europe during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Biden was trying to clarify remarks he made on Friday when he told American forces in Poland. Here you're gonna see when you're there, and some of you have been there. You're gonna see women, young people standing in the middle, in front of a damn tank, just saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground." The suggestion is that U.S. military would soon be in Ukraine, led a White House official to quickly tell the Post that the president has been clear, "We're not sending U.S. troops into Ukraine, and there's no change in that position." On Monday, under questioning from Fox News correspondent Peter Doocy, Biden insisted he had been misunderstood. No, I was talking to the troops. We were talking about helping train the troops and that are the Ukrainian troops that are in Poland, he said. That's what the context was. I sat there with those guys for a couple hours. That's what we talked about. Come on, man. So then you said, you're going to see when you're there. You're not intending to send U.S. troops? Doocy asked. I was referring to with being with and talking with Ukrainian troops who are in Poland, the president insisted. It was not immediately clear whether Biden misspoke or misused the word trained to describe the interactions between American and Ukrainian military personnel in Poland. Ted Cruz raised the possibility that Biden had revealed the existence of a classified U.S. program in a public setting. It may be that he's explaining secrets on national television, Cruz told Fox News' Sean Hannity Monday evening. Every time he explains that one thing, it gets worse and worse and worse, and we've got nuclear weapons pointed at each other. It's incredibly dangerous, this kind of presidential weakness. The White House comms director, Kate Bedingfield, tried to shoot down that claim on Tuesday, telling reporters that he met with Poland routinely to interact with Ukrainians. That is something that's known. That it is in no way revealing compromised information. That being said, there's nothing further that I have to say on that beyond what the president has said already. Stop asking questions, stop asking questions, stop asking questions, stop asking questions. From The Blaze, Biden snaps at reporter asking if his comments can be used by Russia for propaganda purposes. It's ridiculous! Video. Yes! President Biden appeared to lose his temper at a reporter asking if his controversial comments about regime change in Russia could be used for propaganda purposes by Vladimir Putin. Biden was speaking to reporters on Monday when he was challenged by PBS reporter about the offhand comment he made calling for Putin to be ousted from power over the war crimes in Ukraine. I still want to get back to your original words that he cannot remain in power. Can you help us understand? You have more foreign policy experience than any other president who's ever held office. Well, it's because he's had more life experience than any other president that's ever held office. Because he's been alive longer than any other president that's ever been in office. Let's listen.
I still want to get back to your original words that he cannot remain in power. Can you help us understand you have more foreign policy experience than any president who has ever held this office? Whether those are your personal feelings or your feelings as president, do you understand why people would believe you, as someone commanding one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world, saying someone cannot remain in power is a statement of U.S. policy? And also, are you concerned about propaganda use of those remarks by the Russians?
No and no.
Tell me why. You have so much experience. You are the leader of this country.
Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that.
I believe that. I've watched your senatorial record, and you've never seen a military action that you don't like. I believe that.
Number one. Number two, what have I been talking about since this all began? The only war that's worse than one intended is one that's unintended. The last thing I want to do is engage in a land war or a nuclear war with Russia. That's not part of it. I was expressing my outrage at the behavior of this man. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And it's more an aspiration than anything. He shouldn't be in power. People like this shouldn't be ruling countries, but they do. The fact they do, but doesn't mean I can't express my outrage about it.
I can express my outrage about it. All right. And the last one we're going to do today is the comms director, the White House comms director, Kate Bedingfield, trying to talk about the chemical weapons once again. And then we'll do a thing that I like and thing that I hate and head out of here for the day.
Okay. There has been so much discussion about the concerns over whether Putin would use chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, biological weapons. Does this increase the administration's concern that Putin might lash out in that way?
Well, as I say, I'm not going to characterize what Vladimir Putin is thinking, what the Kremlin is thinking, or how this might impact their calculus. That is not the intent of putting the information forward. What it does is underscore that this has been a strategic blunder for Russia. But I'm not going to characterize how Vladimir Putin might be thinking about this. I will say that we are prepared for any and all contingencies. As you know, there's a lot of work going on to be prepared for contingencies, and we've also been very clear that should Russia act in that way, there will be severe consequences.
Okay. There has been so much discussion about the concern.
Okay. So, we're not going to use chemical weapons, but we might use chemical weapons if Putin uses chemical weapons. Dude, we are getting into this so hard. It's going to happen. It is going to happen at some point. They're just trying to figure out how to make it and how to sell it to the American people. All right. And with that, we're done with the news for the day, but we are going to do a thing that I like and thing that I hate and head out of here. And thing I like and thing I hate both have to do with culture and entertainment. Well, we open the show with culture and entertainment. And especially once we get to the thing that I hate side of it too. It's just, this is the exact reason that I want to get into the culture side of this and get into movies and music and do this kind of stuff. In spite of the fact that I don't watch movies myself. Get into television, get into movies. Actually make entertaining stuff instead of consuming it from people that hate us. But the thing that I like today, this is not going to go, because I know that I carry over a lot of Stephen Ignoramus audience. I was actually wrestling with whether or not to use this. Because a lot of them are going to come out and tell us that no, women are funny, women are not funny. Well, I've been watching some stand-up lately. And while I stick with, for the most part, the Rogan stand-up, Ron White is one of my favorites, the Blue Collar Guys, those kind of things are. I've explored some of the other stuff that Netflix has put up to the top. And I found a couple, and I think next week I'll do the other one. But I found a couple comics that I've actually quite enjoyed throughout my exploration of Netflix and the stuff that's out there. And one of them, I watched the first special from her probably a month and a half ago when I first started going into doing stand-up. And then just a couple weeks ago, I watched the second Netflix special, and that is Taylor Tomlinson. Now, by a lot of comedic standards, Taylor Tomlinson is very, very young. Her first special was actually called Quarter Life Crisis, which meant that at the time she was 25. I think she's 27 now, because I think that was a couple years ago when she had a Quarter Life Crisis. She's funny. It's not necessarily always the jokes, but it's the delivery. She's very good at delivering. Like, some of these jokes I've listened to, and some of the ones we're going to listen to right now, I wouldn't have laughed at if anybody else would have been delivering these jokes. But it's the way that she comes back out and does it, the facial expressions, it's very good. And I will concede out that, she may be an anomaly among the women aren't funny crowd, because immediately after I finished up this one, the Look at You special, I went back and listened to Nikki Glaser, and in a 45-minute special, I laughed once. I kept going, and it was right at the end, too. For 45 minutes, I was just like, what is she talking? She's talking about blowjobs. And then she made a joke about what the fuck was his name? The guy that dated Taylor Swift. Well, I suppose that narrows it down. John Mayer. She made a joke about John Mayer at the very end. It caught me off guard and I laughed. Other than that, it was nothing. But this one, I was rolling in this special. This was a good one. She's talented. She's funny. An anomaly? Maybe. But I enjoyed it. So let's listen to 3 minutes of Taylor Tomlinson. Yeah, if that was Netflix, you wouldn't be able to see the video of it. But yeah, no, I enjoy that. And again, immediately after that, I watched Nikki Glaser, and Didn't laugh once for 45 minutes, and then once in the last 2 minutes before the special ended. But this girl is good. I like this one. And yeah, it does help that she's cute. I will admit to that, but I'm already anticipating the text message that comes from KTZed to remind me that no, women aren't funny, never funny. All right, let me throw this in there for you guys. That's the link for the clip that we just watched, just the little 3-minute. That special was good. If you find a way to go find that special, whether it be through your actual Netflix or the link that Spartan just posted, it's worth it. It's worth the hour out of your life. I enjoyed it very much. All right. And now for a thing that I hate. Also in the culture avenue. Ultra in the culture aspect of things. So I found this, and you guys know because I did this as thing that I like a while ago when I watched it the last time, but The Umbrella Academy, which season 3 is going to be coming back out. Now that they can go back and film outside of the Pinko fucking Pox, they're actually going to bring back season 3, which I was excited for. I enjoyed season 2. I know Seawall's like, oh, I didn't get into season 2. I closed it halfway through season 2. I couldn't do it anymore. It was too woke for me. What part of that was woke? Other than the fact that they were talking about the civil rights stuff that actually happened in the fucking 60s. There was no wokeness to the Umbrella Academy. It was good. But now it might not be. So reading from CNN, Elliot Page's Umbrella Academy character to come out as transgender. Probably because they need to find a way to explain away the fact that Vanya is no longer going to have tits. Well, not that she really did in the first place, but from Lisa Respers, France. Elliot Page's character on the Umbrella Academy will mimic real life. Because of course he will. Page's character on the hit Netflix series will come out as transgender in the 3rd season. The streaming giant celebrated the news by retweeting Page on its dedicated LGBTQ plus IARRG27RTBNL plus content Twitter account most. Feels good to say this. Elliot Page stars as Victor Hargreaves in Umbrella Academy Season 3, the most tweet read. Page's original tweet included a photo of the star and character, and you know, I thought this was coming. I really did. Which is lame. Because I have got to give it to some of these Netflix writers. They're not bad. Like the Vanya character, it was actually written very, very well. And I don't think that kind of character, that personality plays out in a male character. Even if it's a male character being played by a female character. And this is above and beyond going outside of the scope of the source material, the comics, which, for the most part, the Umbrella Academy was very good at holding on to. The Umbrella Academy was a good show. And it seems like they're set to ruin it because they had to have Ellen Page / Elliot Page on the screen. Which again, separate the art from the artist. And Page's character, Vanya Hargreaves, was very well written, very well performed. I can think that Elliot Page is a fucking nutbag, while still acknowledging the fact that he / she / it has a lot of talent and a lot of acting chops. But hey, when have you ever met a stable actor to begin with? I don't know. I'm probably going to check it out, see what it's like, because I do kind of want to see where the story goes there. I'm 7 times out of 10 willing to bet that they're not going to get season 4. Which probably blows because they are probably going out there and filming season 3 on a cliffhanger too, just like they did for season 1 and seasons 2. We'll see where it goes. I know that they filmed Cowboy Bebop on a cliffhanger too, and it got so poorly received that we'll never know what actually happened. and the end of that cliffhanger, but it is life. It is what it is. Let's head out of here for the day. Let's see this. This is why we need to get into entertainment. This is why we need to get into the situations where it is that we're making the entertainment that we want, not the entertainment that people like Netflix tell us that we want. This is why I want to get into that industry, get into music, get into video games, get into entertainment. This is why I want to do this. Because they keep doing shit like this. I know I said let's get out of here. Now let's say it again. Let's get out of here. Whew. Okay. Well, now that I've blackpilled myself off of this, it's time for me to get out of here, go off and drive through the snow and go see what it is that I have to go back and do at work. So definitely we'll go back and check that out. We'll be back here tomorrow with more contemporary, more news, more headlines. And by the way, if you guys are in here just lurking right now, get some of those last minute messages in there. And by the way, I also do want to come back out and say thank you to everybody who messaged me. Apparently yesterday was the best episode of Contemporary ever because Quest messaged me. I got a couple of other DMs on Twitter, and MK Ultra came out and said, yes, great episode today. Well, he saw me in passing in the chat in Mad Ones last night. So thank you guys for that. I do what I can, and I try to increase quality more and more. Some days I'm off, some days because I didn't sleep well or anything else off of that. But you guys are always here. Thank you for that. And if you are just lurking right now, make sure you get those last minute messages in so I can say thank you for coming and watching the show and coming out and commenting on this as well. It's one of the easiest ways to see who's here is if you comment, so definitely come back out and do that. We will be back here tomorrow to read the live chat, read what's been said throughout the day yesterday, who's all been here throughout the week yesterday. Definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys here tomorrow, seeing what is new in entertainment, news, and the world, and we will see you then. Stick around if you're on Twitch. We are going to go rating as we always do, and we will be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.